if we are to obtain good things, the very things our activities are undertaken to produce, 4 basic questions have to be answered, just so that we can visualize that there are 4, and that each issue gives us questions that it is necessary to think about and answer so as to obtain the good we desire. I have pictured 4 counselors charged with answering one of the 4. I hope that's not confusing. This one character is just a stand-in for us, insofar as we address ourselves to this one question, one particular question that it is crucial to answer. And it is this one question that I want to look at just a little further. I said at one point that Aristotle didn't attach names to the so-called causes. He just specified the issue. And in this case, the issue is the appropriate maker, the maker of a good thing. And if I might burden you with 1 minute of detail, because we're at a crucial point, look at what Aristotle says about this one question. Thomas Aquinas called this one component of the answer causa agens, causa efficiens. But Aristotle didn't use the expressions agent cause or efficient cause. He just described what this operative, this person working for us thinking about it, is going after. What his question is, that is, to make a particular thing, what do we need to find out? What this agent works out, Aristotle wrote, is that from which the change first begins. So really the question here is, how or with whom must the good change that we want, say, in going from no shoe or a shoemaker, going from no shoe to a shoe, how must the good change that we want start? That's the issue. It's an absolutely necessary condition. To have this product, this outcome, we must have this beginning. That is, to bring about making, we must have a shoemaker. And likewise, to bring about some other desired good, we have to answer this same question. Who is the agent who is equipped to give us the good in question? Well, we have been here before. To bring about the thing, the good that choosing is all about, we must have a free agent. Who is the person who is equipped to give us the free choice? We discussed this before. Who is the person who is equipped to give us the free choice? Only you. Only when you choose is it a free choice. This was the very conclusion of our inquiry into the issue in freedom. I asked, what actually does freedom mean? What is the issue in freedom? It's not choosing, it's this. Freedom means agency. The disorder concerns exactly that, the improper agent. The person who should choose is replaced with one who should not. Freedom is avoiding that disorder. Freedom then has to do with the agent condition of the production or making of something. As the shoemaker is the only agent capable of generating a shoe, you are the only agent capable of generating the thing at issue here, whatever it happens to be. We haven't, in fact, got to the point of naming the good product connected with freedom. We didn't need to name it to understand the basic thing at issue in freedom, which we were able to see is your own agency, not being interfered with. Now we have more of the picture. Not being interfered with in producing something. You may, of course, believe that freedom is just not being interfered with, period. Not having your agency stolen. We'll look at that issue. But if freedom falls into this order of things that Aristotle has analyzed, and it does, this is the framework it belongs to. The story is to bring about and have Whatever freedom is a necessary condition of, we must have you as the agent. This is what people once understood freedom to be about. Augustine's view of freedom, for instance. But the nihilist says no, wants to tell a different story. In the classical understanding of human action that we have been looking at, which fully is the setting of freedom, freedom is action involved in something. And that is what is fleshed out by the remaining three questions. Freedom is not productive of freedom. Rather, freedom is productive of something. It is one of the conditions of that production. Do you see then how freedom falls into place here in this framework? I'm not saying that it can't be ripped out of this, torn out of this natural nest of issues. But a person with a classical understanding has no reason whatsoever to do that, to tear it from this setting. Indeed, this whole complex, and especially the end or purpose, the inherent orientation of action to positive change, to some desirable end, this is what makes us count freedom as a human good. And glance again at Aristotle's language. To say, as he does, that this condition is the first beginning of change implies that there's more to the change than this. But this is what starts it. And without this agent was not anything made that was made. This idea of the agent condition that I've been talking about is an idea that you are quite familiar with. You have heard it before. Likewise, all shoes were made through a maker of shoes, and without that kind of maker was not any shoe made. We have one step left to complete the picture that I called the classical understanding of freedom. We have approached it in what may have seemed an oblique way, coming from the understanding of action. But freedom is freedom of action. And now everything is in place to give us the ancient view of freedom, which is also the Christian view. The most important thing is simply to fill in the blank we left in this whatever. What is freedom about? If freedom is a necessary condition in a process of making something, making what? The general answer is already clear. In the classical understanding, a free choice is a choice made in the making or generation of something good. What does the free choice make? Think about this question given to us by the classical framework, which concerned itself with agency. It is a teleological question, since making has an end. What does the free choice make? What does it aim to accomplish? Why should we have a land of the free? This turns out to be a rather pivotal question. And I have to confess some surprise at how much easier it was to find this phrase than the original one, land of the free, home of the brave. I'm actually wondering, are people misremembering it? Does land of the free make more sense when it exists because brave people fought for it, but make less sense by itself? It strikes me as a good question to ask people. Why even have a land of the free? What is freedom for? That's our question. In the ancient world, freedom is for something, not just a result of something. The ancient scheme we're looking at has a rationale. You are the right one to choose for a reason. That reason being that only you are the one who is equipped to produce the desired thing. Can an enslaved person produce a good product? A person who was enslaved, forced to make shoes, makes choices, chooses suitable leather, cuts it into the right shapes. In fact, the slave master does not tell him which way to cut at all. If he does, he won't get the shoe which he wants. The master is not a shoemaker, can't make the shoe. And because it is shoes he wants, he does not interfere in the decisions of shoemaking, which are therefore free. Relative to the product, then, the properly made shoe, the enslaved man is free to cut where he wants. It is the free choices of the shoemaker, then, that are precisely the ones that produce good shoes. So we now have our answer. The free choice is the choice that is set free to fasten on what is conducive to the desired end. The choice unhindered by anything, controlled by nothing, but concerned to produce what is being sought, which is some good. It is a human choice, free to go to the good, the scissors going to the line that is the right cut for the sole of the shoe, the scissors, like the child running to her mummy, free to go straight to mummy. Strange as it may seem, the issue in both cases is love. We are drawn to the good and want freedom to produce the good because of love of everything good. But of course, the greatest product is not a shoe. There is a greatest act of making. And for that end, the same thing must be said. To make that thing, the action must be hindered by nothing. As the shoemaker must be free to find the invisible line in the leather, so the maker of this thing must be free to find the line that marks the shape of this thing. The greatest product is a good man, a good woman. This was as true in ancient Greece as later in Christianity. The difference being the qualities that mark the good man. Aristotle's magnanimous man, great-souled man, versus Jesus' image of the servant, which was countercultural and puzzling to people of the ancient world. Each person made in the image of God, merely in having that reference, or whatever we should call that image, has an intended form that, just as we have said of the shoe, it will take freedom to achieve. Each person is appointed a kind of co-creator, or better, co-maker in that plan, the making of a human being. And we have been looking at what making requires. Freedom. Action unimpeded in hitting the mark that you must hit to give that product the required shape. Sin, by the way, in the New Testament is not hitting the mark. Talking about human beings, product sounds like the wrong word. But this is a thing that has to be produced. It is born and grows naturally, but it has to be formed, adjusted, according to the image. And when acting, the human being has to be unconstrained, so that in those acts, this person is moving himself or herself to the outline, into the form of the good human being. And a person cannot move herself to the good, make the required cut or alteration when some stronger hand is controlling her. And this stronger hand may be a force within her or a force outside her, because the acts that form herself are not just acts about herself. She may act for the good of her child, and that will be a kind of tailoring of herself. And she may be prevented by someone else or by her society from doing so. Her child may be abused by a school system that wants whatever school systems want. But be abused. The mother may or may not want the trouble it costs her to intervene. We might say that ordinary people give in to those two kinds of constraint, inner and outer, and fail to do good and become good, remaining conformed to their inclinations and being like everyone else, cowardly, lazy, selfish, indifferent. The good person, too, acts out of desire. He or she desires the good that we are talking about. And to make or produce this greatest of things, the thing we said before must be said again. To make this thing, a person's actions must be hindered by nothing, free to produce the good thing being sought. This is exactly what freedom is about. It is freedom for a good. My point here has been simply to show that, first, all making is the production of some good, and that, second, in all making, freedom, relative to that good, is essential. In a lesser kind of making, where the product is a shoe, as well as in the greatest work of making, the realization of the divine image. In fact, even in bad kinds of human action, we see the chief lesson, in that all human acts are aimed at some form of good, even a short-term good, whose net result is in fact bad. It is a good, fleeting though it may be, that is sought. The claim is not that drunks need freedom, but that relative to the actual good that this man seeks, forgetting his troubles, freedom to choose the thing that delivers that good is indispensable. Our question has been, what is freedom for? It is for good. If it isn't in fact good to be lying drunk on the sidewalk, then freedom is needed to the end of good. I said that a person cannot move himself to the good when some stronger hand, like a force within him, is controlling him. He needs freedom. Just as the hands of the cobbler must be free to fly to the line in the leather where the cut must be made, this man must be set free to run to the thing that lifts the burden that makes him drink. David Hart writes, "The will, when freely moved, does nothing except toward an end, conceived, perceived, imagined, hoped for, resolved upon, desire, and knowledge." This is knowledge of the good that is desired, knowledge of its positive qualities. Desire and knowledge in a single impulse direct any expression of free agency, according to some purpose present to the mind, even if only vaguely. Otherwise, there is no act at all. The enslaved man, who is free in his making of the shoes that he is forced to make, free relative to that good, is highly conscious of another good. His own estimation of what it is good to do is recommending something else. The action that it is urging is, get away from here. Get your family away from this evil man. That is what is good. But he is not free to choose that thing that he hopes for, that he desires, according to his own knowledge and understanding of the good. Another will has been imposed, taking his agency away. The wrong agent has been inserted to settle an issue concerned with his own welfare. Every person, and whether they know it or not, is on what Hart calls a pilgrimage toward the good, in the pursuit of which the power of choice is indispensable. I feel I ought to pause to deal with a question, which is, Can't the man who is constrained by others be virtuous? Be a good man still? Couldn't you and I, who are not free, become saints? That is anyone really stopped by external powers from being good? Isn't our only true concern the good of the soul? My answer is simply that we are not just souls in that sense. We are husbands and wives, children and parents, neighbors and citizens. This too is us. And it is an evil if we fail to perform in these roles. It is not an evil only if we fail because of liquor or some other inner weakness. And also, doesn't this view of the comparative unimportance of external constraint seduce people into the very kind of inner failing it tells us to care about? Does it not say, put up with external suppression? Well, Jesus does not model that. He opposed the authorities who were telling the people how to be faithful children of God. He rivaled the temple powers, and thanks to that rivalry, went to the cross. Would it not have been cowardice to have avoided Jerusalem? To be trapped by something, not moving on this pilgrimage toward the good, unable to move in certain ways, is to be unfree. And to be unfree is to be pulled away from and out of reach of your own life, which is a life ordered to the good. So we have the answer to the question of this section, and it is a big one. What does the free choice make? Free choice is the condition of all productive change, including the change that makes you into something good, that moves you along the path to fulfillment, your flourishing state. Ask, why would we want a land of the free? If that produces something, what is it? And some people will answer, it produces freedom, free people. But no, that's not the answer. The answer is much more profound, because much more clearly meaningful. The answer is freedom produces all produced good. What free choice delivers is not just one more product that we can add to the list of shoes, health, and so on. It delivers, to speak more precisely, it is a necessary condition of all produced good. There are chains that keep you from making it, opponents that prevent you from producing it. Free choice is choice in your control. Choice of actions free of those constraints, freeing you to fasten on what is conducive to the desired good. What is freedom for? The enjoyment of the good, both alone and in community. Why have a land of the free? Because it is a land of flourishing. The free are free of the chains and oppressors that stifle the generation of human goods. But obviously, this doesn't follow just from our being unconstrained. When you are free to fasten on what is conducive to the good, you don't, simply by virtue of that, do it. You have to have that good as your objective and act with that objective in mind so as to produce that good. In shoemaking, you cannot cut wherever you like. Freedom frees you to cut where it is good to cut. And that is why Hart said that freedom was both indispensable to the good while being only one condition. The power of choice, however indispensable it may be to this pilgrimage toward the good, is nothing but the minimal condition for a freedom that can be achieved only when that power has been subsumed into a far higher power. His point here is that freedom, say, from cowardice or from escaping to drink, is not obtained easily. But more noteworthy for us is his other observation that freedom, when it is had, is just one condition among others. And we have seen three of those others already. These are conditions of human goods. We have been looking at the role of one of these only, to the extent that we find the agent who is the right agent to enact a particular productive change, the person who knows how to treat an illness, or the one who is rightly in charge of my own fate, which in this or that situation is me. Then, and only then, can some particular desired good be produced. Only when we have answered this question, who can generate this good, and put that person in charge of the affair, only then can we have that good. But in the classical outlook, there are three other conditions to fulfill also. These too pose questions that must be answered if we are to have that same desired change. They are the other parts of the formula for productive change. For example, only when we have answered this question, what is the purpose of the thing we are making, that we can, for instance, choose the right materials. As I mentioned in passing, these four counselors answered their questions in consultation with each other. Consider, how could you pick the right agent of the operation until you knew what purpose that operation was meant to achieve? It's from the purpose that your activity takes direction. All of these questions are conditions for productive change. It has been a long trek, but now I think we're just beginning to see the payoff, and the full payoff will be startling. In the light of all that we've looked at, let's go back to the start and just ask again, is it true what we are told? What we aim to make in a free choice, choosing a magazine or a magazine stand, what we aim to make in a free choice is simply a choice that is unhindered by anyone. Is that true? The issue that freedom in particular is concerned with is indeed hindrance. But freedom, we agreed, has to do with free choice. And what is stated here is never what choice is about. Does a shoemaker simply want to make a choice that is unhindered by anyone? Is he desperate, inspired with the passion of freedom, to cut the leather in any way, provided it is not the way that he is told to cut? No. Does a doctor want to make simply an unhindered choice, any prescription whatsoever, provided that she decides it? Absurd. If the thing that every free action aims to make is simply that, an unobstructed choice, sheer choice in and of itself, if that is the objective, if that is freedom, why not leave the restaurant after ordering? You've done that. You've made the thing that we're being told free action is for, that we are told is the glory of the land of the free, choosing for yourself. But of course, the issue is not choosing. It is choice as a means to obtain the good that is the very purpose of choosing. The common claim is quite incorrect. It is the word simply that is wrong. And it is in there to cut freedom off from all that it is attached to in the classical picture of human life. In modern freedom, we are being sold a deformed picture of life, of who we are and what we want. Why am I making you suffer through this painstaking examination? Because a complete corruption of our understanding of freedom is very likely to be our greatest societal problem. Isn't this the age of freedom? Isn't freedom our great accomplishment? Well, do we advance freedom? Suppose that in the name of freedom, as freedom, something entirely different is carefully secured and protected, something that has nothing to do with what, as I have just shown you, freedom always was, a requirement of love of the good. That is, a requirement tied to, necessitated by, love of the good. But once removed from that setting, this fine thing is a threat to the good. That removal is exactly what was hinted at in the usual explanation of freedom in the word simply. I'm showing you that a free choice is not simply a choice unhindered by anyone. This claim is false. Now, before we get to nihilism, and we're almost there, we want to answer just one more question. What if people care to satisfy only one of the four conditions? Suppose one of these you see as the really important condition, and that is the one you aim to satisfy. You may sense the answer. We've touched on this, but only very briefly and in passing, and everyone here needs to see this clearly. Can you separate these four conditions? Can you, because of the special importance of freedom, say, in the age of freedom, just put all your effort into satisfying the agent condition of productive change? It's not that we don't care about the others, but couldn't we just leave the other conditions to be settled separately? Suppose we do not reject this classical account of freedom, but simply, for freedom's sake, we do exactly what you have here. We take care of all these conditions, but we do it in this way. As a society, we commit to caring about freedom, but we will leave it to individuals to answer the question of purpose, say, in the way that accords with their own varying beliefs. That's not just a hypothetical. This occurred in history. In the 19th century, this happens to be liberalism. Isn't freedom believed to be a genuinely universal, tradition-independent norm acceptable to all? What I just proposed is the project of modern liberal individualist society. Liberalism. Liberalism is established on commonly accepted principles of this kind. That plan, wrote McIntyre, would enable those who espouse widely different and incompatible conceptions of the good life for human beings to live together peaceably within the same society. Every individual is to be equally free to live by whatever conception of the good he or she pleases, derived from whatever tradition he or she may adhere to. Unless that conception of the good should happen to recommend reshaping the life of the rest of the community in accordance with it. This is the fear behind the word simply, which I noted in the everyday explanation of what freedom is. There is something that is unwanted, and that is a reshaping of life that could be required by what? By the kind of grasp of human fulfillment we discussed earlier, kind of human fulfillment which urges a reformation and correction of the way people are, an adjustment according to the image of what is good. If, as we said, to make this good product, the action must be unhindered, any society that accepts what I called an image for people to conform to accepts the reality of this image, that the image is somehow set into the order itself, poses a threat. No such ideal must be allowed. We must have a society without such a conception. Nietzsche said, whenever the word authority is so much as heard today, one believes oneself in danger of a new slavery. Indeed, whenever the word good is heard, modern man hears the approach of a slave master. There must be no image of man to which man per se ought to conform. And what kind of idea is that? That no such ideal must be allowed? It expresses the belief at the root of nihilism. There are no such things as a good independent of the self, a good outside individual people who are simply valuing things. For many 19th century people, the moment such a conception of good is given recognition is the moment that dissenting views of good are targeted for suppression. So freedom takes on this new urgency, this connotation of what in fact protects us from verdicts of good. The good must be sidelined or safely withdrawn from public domain and relegated to the private. And it is from this age, by the way, that we got this new ordering of society into public and private. So this is the final step. And when we take it, you will see the actually bizarre thing that has happened. Why not separate these concerns? Make freedom public, because we're all agreed on it, but leave purpose private. Why push purpose out of the public sphere? Because purpose, we have seen, is always tied to some good, and people are not agreed on what's good. Do you like this proposal? Does this appeal to you as a way to accommodate our differences? Can this work? The renowned Aristotle scholar, Sir David Ross, tells us that for Aristotle, none of the four causes is sufficient to produce an event. That is, to generate the positive change that they are all concerned with. They're all tied to that. The genesis of positive change, the introduction of such production of good into human society. He continues, and speaking generally, we may say that in Aristotle's view, all four are necessary for the production of any effect. This means that freedom cannot be looked after first by itself. That is, you cannot decide who the proper agent is first, and then start answering the other questions, leaving the other three questions to be settled as different people will according to their own beliefs. If to you, the proposal of liberalism I mentioned a few minutes ago sounded plausible, then I have succeeded in replicating in your mind a step by which the transition to nihilism was pulled off in Western history. That is, the more sensible that liberal plan sounded to you in its concern to avoid the frightening potential of oppression, the threat of a new slavery, the more you were like our 19th century ancestors, vulnerable to being swindled out of their own tradition in a bait and switch. The package they got instead being the harvest of nihilism. This proposal is not acceptance of the classical outlook at all. It is the rejection of that outlook, passed off as acceptance. Do you see how? Let's see this with our own eyes. And for reasons of clarity, I want to begin with the simplest way to see that to separate these issues is to reject the classical outlook, in which, as Ross has just explained, they are inseparable. Why are they inseparable? I don't want to assert this. I want to show you this. Let's suppose that our concern were to separate and take care of, by careful reflection, the material condition. We accept this framework and we are concerned solely with its issue of matter. So this figure here is us, insofar as we go about answering the particular question at issue here, and because we are doing this separately, that means not collaborating with the others, not making use of their answers. If we imagine putting this agent to work for us, just answering the material question, which is what he does, it becomes pretty laughably obvious after a moment's thought that in the classical schema that we are supposedly still in, the work of this character is not simply to name some material. It is to name the material of something. Of what? As we saw in Aristotle, the setting from which all these questions arise is something to be done. It is the making of some change. Some agent is going after some particular good. Any material that is to be named is material of something. Material of what? For what? In our scheme, it is a material condition of some kind of action that, without a good that it is our purpose to obtain, gives us a situation in which there is no act at all. Imagine that some character comes up to you and says, dirt. Yes, lovely, dirt. This is a pointless naming of material. A material is named, but the material condition names the material necessary for something. Dirt, if the agent of the action has decided to do gardening, or leather, if you have decided to make shoes. Freedom is a condition, not a good in and of itself. Now, imagine a crowd of people in history calling out for leather. Why are they doing that? Has to be for some reason. If they just want the leather for its own sake, because leather is pretty good stuff, that answer is senseless. If they are sane, as people generally are, they are asking for the material for something, to make some shoes or harnesses or something. And that thing that they have in mind will have a form and also a use. It will be related to some good these people desire. In fact, they justify their demand for leather by naming that good. If this protest is conceivable, it will be a rational protest, in which case they'll explain their need for shoes. They will appeal to our common ability to understand, treating you like fellow human beings who can understand human bad and good. So this is our answer. No cry for a material is separable from the rest of what Aristotle explained. I know that I've been taxing your patience, but to return to freedom, you'll have to stay with this just a little longer, because now we're really 3 steps away from the summit. And the view onto a very weird landscape, our world in its conception of freedom, seen for what it is. Here, finally, is where we turn the corner into modernity. Allow me to ask that same question I just asked now, one last time, and you will see a prospect stretch out before you that I expect you have never seen before. Once again, what if you satisfy only one of the 4 conditions? That alone is all that you care about, not the others? Is that even possible? It is not possible in a productive change. That is what I've just shown you. In such change, you do involve the other conditions, and there is also the question of who is equipped to produce the good that is really at issue in this planned or already initiated activity. There's no way to answer this question prior to determining what good we desire to bring about. Why not separate these concerns? Why not do what is impossible? Because it's impossible. They're all conditions of some one thing, a productive change. They're not each conditions of 4 different things. Again, if material arises as an issue, it is linked with another issue, an end, a good. The question regarding material never arises alone, nor can it be answered alone. It is always the right material for something, identified by its good, formed so as to deliver that good. The same thing is true of the question about freedom. What needs to be worked out is who the rightful agent is, who could get us the productive change we are talking about. This tells us that the liberal proposal we have just considered was a charade. Acceptance of the classical scheme was a sham. That scheme was rejected. The classical conception of freedom was refused because it framed the issue of freedom relative to good. Freedom by the classical conception has to do with securing the right agent for the generation of any of the goods that make people flourish. If the classical conception of freedom was rejected, what view of freedom is counted as freedom? What view is this? What caused the classical conception of freedom to be rejected was, as I've suggested in passing, is its connection with the good. To that conception, the modern man says, the very idea that freedom is a condition of something else is rubbish. Nonsense. Everyone knows that freedom is a good in and of itself. Now, the leather example that we just had showed that this is false. The leather example that we just had involved the material condition, and it was an easy way to see the absurdity that results when matter is counted an end in itself. Our issue now is freedom. In the classical schema, a free choice is the choice that is set free to fasten on what is conducive to an end that is loved and desired for its good. When that constellation of issues is broken up and the material condition was isolated as something meaningful in itself, the result was absurdity and truly meaninglessness. But we are interested in freedom in the classical conception of productive action, the agent condition. And so we need to look directly now, finally, at this. So here and for the last time is the scene once again. People who want just what the agent condition gives them. But now we have to forget the word condition, because that is what drags in all the rest that the modern person has rejected. The freedom that the modern person wants, he wants alone, for itself. And if people want it alone, that means they don't want it or see it as a condition of any larger thing. And so people say, we want freedom, non-interference, period. Remember that all through this discussion, freedom has indeed been, as everybody indeed says, non-interference. But it was always freedom from interference in achieving some good. If then the modern person wants freedom for its own sake, as a good in and of itself, this one thing, without any of the other three, freedom detached from the classical understanding, what does that look like? A free choice is, again, simply a choice made by you. But I have to show you this, and I have to show you this by analogy, because if we keep talking about freedom, you will never see it, because of the way you have been trained to understand freedom. To ask for freedom is to ask for agency, to do something. Freedom, the unimpeded ability to do what you want. Because you are a human being, some purpose is driving your desire to act. Without that purpose, there would be no act to call on freedom for. Without that purpose, you would not be invoking freedom to do something, to enter women's spaces, to compete in women's sports, to claim treatment coverage, as if you had an illness which you insist you do not have, etc. To do these things unimpeded. But your purpose, which might be acceptance, or the good done in your doing these things, that is not your refrain. Perhaps because you could not justify acceptance to more than a few, and could not convincingly argue that these things are good, your cry instead is freedom. But freedom is simply agency. And when, in the modern way, you ask for freedom, period, you are demanding to be the agent, full stop, nothing else to be considered. And this is like asking to be the shoemaker, period, nothing else to be considered, no talk about shoes or purposes. Can this make sense? It looks like this. Now people are protesting. The shoemaker, we want the shoemaker. And in response to this outcry, imagine that a shoemaker is given to them. That is, they are given the rightful agent of shoemaking, the person who knows how to make a shoe, part of which is understanding what the form of a shoe is, what a shoe is for, and that's what material is needed in making one, because that is what a shoemaker really is. And the people respond, we don't want that, none of that. Your established notions of a suitable form, a desirable purpose? No way. The shoemaker, the decider of shoes. This is a new idea. In the rejection of established notions, a suitable form, a desirable purpose, did you see the nihilists? No, consider this demand. Where does it come from? Somewhat puzzled, we reply, what do you mean? The shoemaker is the person who can generate that particular good thing, the person suited to make that established good. No, we're not buying into your established purpose and suitable maker. We know all about your system of constraint. It's not your conception of shoemaker we want, it's ours. The shoemaker is the one who decides what a shoe is. Notice that this shoemaker is also counted by these people the proper maker of the shoe. That's the old idea, the agent condition idea. So it has a familiar ring. But now it is divorced from the old rationale. And we're also getting an explanation for this that comes out of the blue. It comes straight from nihilism. A completely new story that trashes the old explanation of why an agent is the right agent of the choice. And finally, the new story is sheer assertion. It is in fact the opening shot of a war of conquest, a kind of military move against the classical order. This new story about freedom is the founding act of an historically new understanding of freedom, but not just of freedom, also of action in society. And what happened when this shot was fired from liberty, this newly loaded word? We didn't hear it as a shot. We were just told a new story, and we were sold. It really goes too far to say won over, as I said in my title. What kind of resistance did we put up? You hear the new story in the words of John Stuart Mill when he writes, "The only freedom which deserves the name is that of pursuing our own good in our own way." Does this sound like a complete rejection of the outlook that has governed us till this time? You hear the message of non-interference, but that was not in the classical outlook the substance of free choice. It was a single necessary condition of it. Now it is the sufficient condition, the whole thing. That Mill, for example, makes perfectly clear when he adds that freedom is a principle requiring liberty of tastes and pursuits, of framing the plan of our life to suit our own character, of doing as we like, subject to such consequences as may follow, without impediment from our fellow creatures, so long as what we do does not harm them, even though they should think our conduct foolish, perverse, or wrong. Somehow, the claim that I've said is false, a free choice is simply a choice unhindered by anyone, became true, became the accepted meaning of freedom. Somehow, but not on the basis of argument. Where is the argument that reversed the verdict, that explains why this transformation of the meaning of freedom was necessary, why the classical conception needed replacement? There is no such text. Mill didn't provide it, nor did anyone else. An age in world history arrived when the issue was, as much as any other issue, freedom, consciously an issue. The background to that need of freedom was a common human experience, an absence of freedom, other people removing it. Attention to this problem grew to make it a great issue, bringing about the age of liberty. In this age of liberty, what is it we want? Freedom. Freedom above all. Simply freedom. And in this age in which there was a fight for freedom, for liberty, far from only one fight, everyone who is for it has understood the trouble, rightly so, as the denial of agency. It indeed is. And it now comes about that we have countries that are a land of liberty, that are for freedom. When people are asked, what is it about your country that makes it great? The answer is, it's a free country. And is it a good country if it is all about freedom? The trouble is, as I hope you can see now, that when we say that it is all about freedom, it is completely unclear what we are talking about. The right thing to say to that person in response is explain. That explanation, their explanation of freedom, will either take you into the classical understanding of human acts or take you forward into private agency. You must appreciate what it means to call out for agency, period, leaving out of consideration all the rest. Once freedom alone became the issue, non-interference alone cut off from the identification of defensible purposes, purposes for which reasons could be given to other human beings in terms of goods they recognized. Reasons that indeed must be given where there is conflict over desires so that the best choice can be made. Once freedom became a right of private judgment, private means reasons need not be given to any public. The only opposite word is freedom. No defense need be offered against charges of corruption, perversity, falsity, foolishness, endangerment, hideousness. At that point, the free country began to breed something disturbing. It breeds gods. Not people who generate things according to a reigning good, an order in which good is found, but gods who create the good, with which they anoint a world that holds no inherent meaning set there for them to recognize. Indeed, if we live in an age whose chief moral value has been determined by overwhelming consensus to be the absolute liberty of personal volition, the power of each of us to choose what he or she believes, wants, needs, or must possess, if our culturally most persuasive models of human freedom are unambiguously voluntarist, the will, we believe, is sovereign because unpremised, free because spontaneous, and this is the highest good, then we have entered into a radically ulterior condition, since a corner has been turned, not just away from the good, but ipso facto, into nihilism. For a society that believes this must at least implicitly embrace and subtly advocate very particular moral metaphysics, the unreality of any value higher than choice, or of any transcendent good ordering desire towards a higher end. Further, it is a deeply disturbing country that we live in because of what it says about not them, but us. If we believe that freedom means live and let live, then we now have that understanding of freedom ourselves. We will be stepping aside as the gods come through saying, after you, please, I wouldn't want to restrict your autonomy by living myself according to patently superior principles, according to the sacred creed of my own faith. To say this is to bow to the idol, to the nothing that now has a presence in the temple, in our false and indeed senseless, except to a nihilist, understanding of liberty.